Folks, let me tell you about a day that shook the bones of Dusty Ridge like a rattlesnake's warning. It was high noon in that godforsaken town, the sun beating down on the cracked earth like a blacksmith's hammer when the first shot rang out. I was there, leaning against the hitching post outside the general store, nursing a lukewarm coffee and watching the world go by. That's when I saw her Leela, the Apache woman who towered over most men like a mountain pine in a field of scrub brush. She wasn't just tall. She was built solid, with shoulders that could shoulder a plow and arms forged from years of survival in the wilds. Her deep brown eyes held the fire of her ancestors, but there was a shadow in them, a loneliness that whispered of endless trails and empty nights under the stars. The outlaw who fired that shot was a no-good drifter named Harlan Snake Wilkins, drunk as a skunk and meaner than a cornered badger. He'd spotted Lila's pouch of coins hard-earned from trading pelts, and figured her size made her an easy mark. "Hand them over, you freakish squaw," he snarled, his revolver wavering in his grip. The bullet whizzed past her ear, splintering a barrel of flour behind her. But Leela didn't flinch. No, she dodged with the grace of a desert fox, her eyes flashing defiance. Deep down, though, I could see that profound ache. She wasn't just fighting for her coins. She was fighting the ghosts of a life spent wandering, yearning for a patch of earth to call home and a man strong enough to stand by her side. Without breaking under the weight of the world's scorn, the market square froze, folks scattering like tumbleweeds in a gale. Harlan lunged again, his filthy hand reaching for her throat. But before he could close the distance, a shadow fell over him. Wyatt Kane, the rancher from the outskirts, stepped in like fate itself. Wyatt was no spring chicken middle-aged, with skin tanned to leather by endless suns and piercing blue eyes that could cut through a man's lies. His voice came low, a growl that rumbled from his chest. "Touch her, and you'll meet your maker right here in the dirt." He yanked Harlan back by the collar, disarming him with a punch that cracked like thunder, sending the outlaw sprawling into the dust. The hush that followed was thicker than molasses. Wyatt didn't say much more. He just calmly fished out a few coins from his pocket and paid for the loaf of bread Leela had dropped in the scuffle. He handed it to her with a simple nod, his expression steady as a rock. "My ranch has room for one more at supper," he said. "No fanfare, no pity, just an offer hanging in the air like smoke from a dying fire." I watched Lila's face, those brown eyes narrowing with suspicion. Men had tricked her before. I knew that much from the whispers around town. They saw her height and strength as a sideshow curiosity, something to gawk at or exploit, not the mark of a woman who survived raids, famines, and betrayals that would break lesser souls. She clutched the bread to her chest, glancing at the crowd that had reformed, murmuring like vultures. Old Mrs. Hargrove, the busybody who ran the seamstress shop, clucked her tongue. Poor Wyatt, taking in strays. That one's more trouble than she's worth. And young Tommy, the blacksmith's apprentice, snickered with his pals. Bet she could wrestle a bear, ain't no man gonna tame that. But Leela followed Wyatt out of town anyway, her long strides matching his as they mounted up and rode off toward the horizon. Her heart must have been pounding like a war drum, suspicion twisting in her gut. What did this rancher want? A worker? A novelty? Or was there something genuine in those blue eyes? Something that saw past the labels the world slapped on her. Wyatt's ranch was modest, tucked against a ridge of red rock that glowed like embers at sunset. It was a place of hard-won solitude, with a weathered cabin, a corral of hardy mustangs, and fields that stretched out under the vast Arizona sky. He showed her to a spare room at the back simple, with a cot, a lantern, and a sturdy lock on the door. "Stay or go, your choice, no strings," he said plainly, his face betraying no emotion beyond quiet respect. No smirk, no leer, just a man offering shelter in a world that rarely did, for days. Leela barricaded herself in that room. I can imagine her sitting there, back against the wall, listening to the thud of Wyatt's boots outside as he chopped wood with rhythmic swings of his axe, the crack echoing like distant gunfire, or the low whinny of cattle as he tended them at dawn, his hands calloused from reins and ropes. Her scars ached old wounds from lashes in her youth, betrayals by traders who promised safety only to sell her out. The loneliness gnawed at her, a profound emptiness that made the room feel like a cage. Even with the lock on her side, hunger finally coaxed her out. She crept into the main room, finding a plate of beans and fresh cornbread waiting on the scarred oak table. Wyatt had stepped away, giving her space, no hovering, no questions. It stirred something in her, a flicker of trust in her guarded soul. Maybe this wasn't a trap. Maybe, just maybe, there was kindness without cost. One afternoon, Wyatt returned from the fields, his shirt plastered with sweat, dust caking his boots. He paused at the sight of Leela mending a broken fence post with her powerful hands, heaving the wood into place like it was nothing. He watched silently for a moment, then offered, "The horses could use a strong hand like yours if you're staying. No demands, just an opening." Leela looked up, her brown eyes meeting his blue ones, searching for deceit. Finding none, she nodded, and something shifted like the first rain after a drought. That night, under a starlit sky that stretched forever, Leela sat by her window, the cool breeze carrying the scent of sage and earth. Hope stirred in her like a distant thunderstorm, rumbling low and promising. Could this ranch be the anchor she'd craved, the end to her ghostly wandering? But doubt lingered, a shadow in her heart, whispering of past hurts. Dawn broke golden, painting the prairie in hues of fire. Wyatt was already out, hammering new posts into the ground, his muscles straining under his shirt. Leela emerged from her room, her long hair tied back, steps tentative in this new space. She paused, watching him work those callous hands steady, unyielding. He glanced up, gave a simple nod, no urging, no judgment. It was that calm acceptance that lightened the weight on her shoulders just a bit. After a quiet moment, she walked over, bent down, and lifted a heavy beam with effortless strength. Wyatt blinked in mild surprise, but said nothing, simply moving aside to give her room. They worked side by side, his hammer striking in rhythm with her breaths, the morning wind whispering through the grass. By midday, both were soaked in sweat, muscles aching, but there was a unity in it, a bridge built from shared labor without the need for words. They shared a meal then, simple fare under the shade of a lone cottonwood. Wyatt broke the silence with a dry tale. Had a clever old mule once, smarter than half the folks in town. Left the gate open and led the whole herd straight into my vegetable patch. Ate every last tomato. His tone was even, but his eyes held a spark of humor. Leila looked up, and for the first time, the corner of her mouth curved a faint, rare smile that chased away the shadows in the room. Their routine deepened like a well-worn trail. Leila gathered feed from the fields, her strong frame cutting through the tall grass. Wyatt split logs with powerful swings, stacking them neatly by the cabin. At dusk, they watered the herd together, the sun dipping low and painting the sky in crimson streaks. Not many words passed between them, but a quiet bond formed, natural as roots pushing through parched soil, seeking water. One evening, as Wyatt stacked the last of the firewood on the porch, Leila emerged carrying his worn rocking chair, which she'd repaired with scraps of leather and wire. She set it down beside him and said softly, "You've done enough today. Time to sit." Wyatt looked at the chair, then at her, his blue eyes quiet but warm. He sat, exhaling deeply, and Leila stood beside him, gazing at the night sky. In her heart, something stirred a warmth that felt like the first embers of home. But the world outside wasn't done testing them. A week later, they rode into Dusty Ridge for supplies. The town was a bustle of red dirt roads, saloons spilling laughter, and general stores crammed with goods. The moment Leila dismounted, the air shifted. Conversations halted, glances sharpened into stares. Smirks spread like wildfire. The same kids who'd once thrown taunts now huddled, pointing. "Look at the freak. No man's ever gonna want that for a bride." A group of men outside the saloon burst into crude laughter, one whistling mockingly. Lila's fist clenched, her face flushing with old shame. It surged up, tightening her chest the ridicule that had dogged her steps for years. She wanted to flee, but Wyatt stepped forward, calm as ever. He handed her a woven basket, his voice low and steady. "Go in. Pick what you need. I'll be right here." Leila hesitated, then entered the store, her heart pounding. That's when the slurring brute from the saloon, Big Joe Callahan, a notorious gambler with a grudge against the world, stumbled out, bellowing, "Hey, you oversized savage, who'd take something like you?" Town's laughing stock. Laughter followed, sharp as knives. Leila bowed her head, tears stinging, but before they fell, Wyatt was there. He grabbed Big Joe by the collar, his blue eyes cold as steel. "Listen good, she's my wife. Back off or draw." The street went dead silent. Wyatt's words hung in the air, not born of pity but of a fierce claim. He released the man, who crumpled into the dirt, then turned back to Leila, lifting the basket into her hands as if nothing more needed saying. Leila stood frozen, those words echoing in her chest, wiping away years of mockery. "My wife." Her breath caught, tears welling not from pain, but from a depth of emotion she long buried, defended, claimed, as a woman, not a curiosity. Riding home, Leela clung to Wyatt's waist, the wind whipping across the prairie, carrying away her doubts. For the first time, she felt truly seen, her wandering soul glimpsing the possibility of roots. But rumors were already blazing through Dusty Ridge like a brush fire. Wyatt Kane, claiming the giant Apache as his wife. It ignited envy among the shady types, outlaws eyeing her as a prize for their twisted games. And I knew, watching from the shadows, that this was just the beginning of the storm.